Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
The Herald, Wednesday the 16th of March 2022 News. SNP set to miss poverty targets with 30,000 children left in hardship. This article is by Andrew Learmonth. Tens of thousands of children in Scotland will be locked in poverty unless ministers take radical action, a grim new report has warned. Analysis by the IPPR think tank says that the government is on course to miss statutory child poverty targets unless they're willing to increase the Scottish Child Payment and reform the Scottish Welfare Fund. The Child Poverty Scotland Act 2017 requires Scottish ministers to ensure less than 18% of children are living in poverty by 2023-24 and less than 10% of children are living in poverty by 2030. But recent statistics suggest that around 26% of children, around 260,000, were living in poverty in 2019-20. Hitting the targets will mean lifting 80,000 children out of poverty in the next 2 years. When the Scottish Child Payment was first announced at a level of £10 per week per child, the Scottish Government estimated it would lift 30,000 children out of poverty. However, despite the doubling of the payment, the IPPR still predicts 30,000 children will be in poverty, and that's before considering the impact of both the pandemic and cost of living crisis driven by rising food and fuel costs. The Tackling Child Poverty and Destitution report, written by IPPR Scotland on behalf of the Trussell Trust and Save the Children, urged the government to double the payment again to £40. The groups are also calling for an urgent review of support offered through the Scottish Welfare Fund, with same-day decisions for those applying for crisis grants and more consistency in paying out rather than the postcode lottery that can see people in different local authorities in similar situations receiving vastly different sums. Claire Telfer from Save the Children said families on the lowest incomes are already making impossible decisions to meet their basic needs. Families face even stronger headwinds in the months ahead as the cost of living spirals. As it currently stands, there is a real risk that more and more parents and children's basic needs won't be met. Polly Jones, head of Scotland at the Trussell Trust, warned that the cost of living crisis would mean families on the very lowest incomes would continue to be hit the hardest over the coming months and beyond. Everyone should be able to afford the essentials in life, but food banks in our network see far too many people facing impossible decisions, like whether to put food on the table or heat their homes, she added. Scottish Labour's Social Justice and Social Security spokesperson Pam Duncan-Glancy said the government needed to use the powers it already has. It's clear the SNP's plans fall badly short of both of moral and our legal obligations to the next generation. Reducing poverty should be a defining mission for us all, and it would be a historic failure if we fall short. We need to use every lever we have to tackle poverty in Scotland, including by doubling the Scottish Child Payment and rolling it out to all eligible children, uprating Best Start grants and strengthening the Scottish Welfare Fund. We have more social security powers than ever, giving us a chance to make sure the system is truly fit for purpose instead of relying on stopgaps and sticking plasters. Social Justice Secretary Shona Robison insisted that tackling child poverty was a national mission for the Scottish Government. She said, "We are the only part of the UK to have 5 family benefits, including the Scottish Child Payment. which was designed to tackle child poverty head-on and will double to £20 in just over a fortnight and be extended to under 16s by the end of the year. In 2022-23, we will invest over £360 million in social security, over and above what we receive in the block grant to support people in need. In addition, our £290 million cost of living support package will reach 73% of households, providing £150 to those receiving council tax reduction and those in bands A to D. This builds on our £41 million Winter Support Fund and continued investment in the Scottish Welfare Fund, as well as other measures across government. We will go further, and next week we will publish our next Tackling Child Poverty delivery plan, which will outline the next steps we will take alongside our delivery partners to break the cycle of child poverty. This article is by Andrew Learmonth.
From the Herald on the 16th of March 2022, from the sports section, Hibs and Hearts hit out at pricing of Scottish Cup semi-final by Ewan Payton. Hibs and Hearts have hit out at the Scottish FA's pricing of their Cup semi-final next month. The pair will meet in an Edinburgh Derby Scottish Cup clash at Hampden on Saturday, April 16th. The duo has joined their efforts to make the huge clash in Glasgow more affordable for their supporters. But ticket prices confirmed by the SFA today has led to both sides expressing their disappointment. The majority of adult tickets are set at £35, with certain seating options at £25. A statement from Hibs, matched by Hearts, reads, "After receiving the ticket information from the SFA, there were a number of long and strong conversations regarding the price and expense to our supporters. Our concerns were matched by Hearts as we stressed the point of making football affordable for everyone. We completely understand how much it costs to be a football supporter and how expensive it is to follow your team up and down the country, especially in the current climate. We explained this in detail to the SFA, however, they have not moved on their decision, which is incredibly disappointing and has caused us great frustration. Despite these prices, we hope to see as many Hibbies at Hampden Park as possible and what will be a brilliant occasion for all involved." The article was by Ewan Payton. Recorded from the Herald on the 16th of March 2022, from the sports section, Kurt Zouma charged over video of West Ham defender kicking cat, by Ewan Payton. Kurt Zouma has been charged by the RSPCA for kicking a cat. The West Ham defender was filmed kicking the animal across a kitchen floor last month. In a statement issued on Wednesday afternoon, the charity confirmed both Kurt and Ewan Zouma, who plays for Dagenham and Redbridge, have been charged. The pair will appear in court with a date yet to be announced. An RSPCA spokesperson said, "Following a full and thorough investigation, we have started the process of bringing a prosecution against Kurt Zouma and Ewan Zouma under the Animal Welfare Act. The two cats will continue to be cared for by the RSPCA. We will be in a position to release more information once a court date is confirmed." Zouma has continued to play for West Ham since the incident, but has been on the receiving end of booing, including from Hammers fans. West Ham boss David Moyes said he understood the criticism he faced for continuing to select the France international, admitting what the player had done was terrible. The RSPCA said last month it had taken Kurt Zouma's cats into care. That article was by Ewan Payton.
The Herald Scotland, 17th of March 2022. Glasgow in lowly position in table of 50 large UK cities but enormous potential, by Ian McConnell, Group Business Editor. Glasgow has been ranked 42 out of 50 of the UK's largest population centres in a league table based on indicators including jobs, health and income. Edinburgh is placed 19th in this year's Good for Growth Cities Index, produced by PricewaterhouseCoopers and think tank Demos, with Aberdeen in 37th position. PwC highlighted changes in methodology, which said it meant comparison of our indexed results this year and their respective rankings to last year is not possible. Other indicators used to determine the rankings include skills, work-life balance, house affordability, travel to work times, income equality, the environment and business start-up rates. Robin McBurney, senior partner at PwC's Glasgow office, flagged a below-average performance from Scotland's largest city across several indicators, including health, income and job creation. However, he also underlined Glasgow's enormous potential. PwC estimates the average annual economic growth rate for cities in Scotland in 2021 would have been 7.1%. It notes that this is slightly below the UK average rate of 7.4% for 2021. PwC say that Aberdeen and Edinburgh are showing the strongest levels of recovery, growing by around 7.5% and 7.6%, respectively, in 2021, with Glasgow's expansion last year put at 6.7%. The firm declares that in 2022, these trends are expected to continue, with the economies of Aberdeen and Edinburgh expected to expand by 5.5%, greater than the projected UK average growth rate of up to 5.1%. Glasgow is forecast to grow by 4.4% in 2022. Referring to the COP26 United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Glasgow in November, Mr McBurney said, "We saw last year with COP22 how Glasgow is a modern, vibrant city with global relevance. However, its low placing on the index highlights long-term challenges within the city. Glasgow performs below average in a number of key indicators, including health, income and job creation." He added, "However, our city is one of enormous potential, with skills, equality in income, work-life balance and housing affordability all above average. There are enormous efforts underway in the city to improve our infrastructure and housing needs, while work on both sides of the river shows Glasgow's appeal as both a business and a tourism centre." PwC said, "Scotland's cities are emerging from the pandemic with renewed priorities, largely focused on fairness, the environment and an improved work-life balance." The firm added that for this year's index, the weighting of existing variables had changed after polling showed public opinion on what was important had shifted considerably in the wake of the pandemic. It noted jobs and skills, two of the most important variables last year, see significant decreases in their importance in the updated index. In contrast, the environment and income distribution have seen significant increases. PwC noted two new indicators, safety and high street and shops, had been added to the index, taking the number of variables measured to 12. It said cities across Scotland perform well across three key criteria: skills, where all cities score at or above the national average; transport, where all cities score at or above average; and house price to earnings, where the cities included in the index score significantly higher above average. However, it added that Scottish cities scored less well on health, new businesses and owner-occupation of housing. The accountancy firm concluded, "The report underlines how the north-south divide continues to present a challenge for the UK, with Oxford, Bournemouth, Swindon, Reading and Milton Keynes making up the top 5 in the overall index, while cities in the North and Midlands largely account for those that sit at the bottom." Matthew Hall, senior partner to PwC's Edinburgh office, said, "Edinburgh remains the best performing city in Scotland and benefits from being the historic home to many large financial services businesses, as well as the home of the Scottish Parliament. However, our research shows that whilst the city has a great deal of high-paid jobs and low-paid jobs, there is a significant shortage between the two, pointing to a missing middle in Edinburgh's workforce." This article is written by Ian McConnell. The Herald Scotland, Thursday, 17th of March 2022. The R Group restaurateur exploited immigrant staff and threatened oregano chef over immigration bid, by Victoria Weldon, reporter. A prominent Scottish restaurateur exploited immigrant staff and threatened to withdraw support for a chef's immigration application unless he signed an agreement to pay £4,000 if he ever left the business. Rahul Randev, who owns the R Group, a restaurant firm in East Dunbartonshire, pressured worker Lekanath Fuel to sign an undertaking when he asked for a letter confirming his employment status. He also failed to pay Mr. Fuel, originally from Nepal, the minimum wage and refused to pay him for overtime, which regularly ran to an extra 15 hours per week. Mr. Fuel eventually resigned after he did not receive any wages for weeks, and went on to lodge claims at an employment tribunal for constructive dismissal, breach of contract, and unpaid wages. The 38-year-old won his case and was awarded £8,658 by employment judge Mary Kearns. Judge Kearns said that Mr. Randev, who owns restaurants such as Oregano in Bishopbriggs, Garvey & Co in Mogai, and The Grove in Lindsay, was not a frank and truthful witness during the hearing. She also criticised the firm's treatment of migrant staff, saying, "The claimant and the other migrant employees employed by the R Group were not as free to change employment as other staff because of their requirement for immigration sponsorship. They were engaged for 40 hours per week, but required to work hours far in excess of their contractual hours for no additional pay. It is difficult to escape the conclusion that they were thereby exploited." Mr. Fio came to the UK in 2010 and began working at the Eagle Lodge and Oregano restaurant in February 2012. He was contracted to work 40 hours per week, but normally worked 55 with no additional pay. In 2014, he and other kitchen staff raised this with Mr. Randev, and instead of paying them for the extra hours, he decided to include them in the arrangements for tips, so they were paid an extra £40 in cash. In September 2015, Mr. Fio asked Mr. Randev for a letter confirming his ongoing employment so that he could submit it as part of his application for indefinite leave to remain in the UK, ILR. The tribunal judgment states Mr. Randev indicated that the claimant would have to sign a form before he would give him the letter. He made it clear to the claimant that he would only get his letter for the ILR if he signed the undertaking, and if he did not sign it, his employment may not continue. The document stated that if Mr. Fio's employment ended, he would be liable for the cost of your ILR status and all the other previous costs associated with your immigration. It estimated that this would amount to £4,200. However, Mr. Fio had paid his own visa fee and the fee for his ILR application. The judgment added, Mr. Fio therefore did not understand how the £4,200 referred to in the undertaking that had been calculated, and he was given no supporting evidence. However, Mr. Randev told him that if he did not sign it, then the respondents would not complete the letter he needed to secure his ILR. He implied that the claimant's employment may not continue if he refused to sign. The claimant accordingly signed the document. He felt coerced into doing so and did not consent to it voluntarily. When he later told the businessman that he was leaving the firm, Mr. Randev said, "How can you leave?" and reminded him of the agreement. The company also threatened the worker with a debt collection agency. A spokesman for the R Group said the tribunal, which took place in 2018, was a salutary experience. He added, "In our 30-plus years in business, we have had employed hundreds of staff and have never faced any such allegations before or since. While we disagreed with many of the findings, we have since significantly strengthened our systems and processes to ensure we are demonstrably operating to the highest possible standards." This article is written by Victoria Weldon.
Reported from the Herald on the 17th of March 2022, from the sports section. Rangers fixtures, scores and results as Ibrox outfit take on Dundee, by David Irvin. Rangers head back into domestic duty this weekend after sealing a spot in the Europa League quarter-finals. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's men completed their last 16 triumph with a 4-2 aggregate win over Red Star Belgrade on Thursday. But they now turn their attention to facing Dundee, a side they beat 3-0 in Scottish Cup action last weekend on Sunday. Rangers fixtures. Sunday, March 20th, Dundee vs Rangers. Sunday, April 3rd, Rangers vs Celtic. Thursday, April 7th, Europa League quarter-final first leg. Sunday, April 10th, St Mirren vs Rangers. Sunday, April 17th, Celtic vs Rangers. Rangers results. Wednesday, March 2nd, St Johnstone 0, Rangers 1. Saturday, March 5th, Rangers 1, Aberdeen 0. Thursday, March 10th, Rangers 3, Red Star Belgrade 0. Sunday, March 13th, Dundee 0, Rangers 3. Thursday, March 17th, Red Star 2, Rangers 1. That article was by David Irvin.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 17th of March 2022, From the opinion section, Neil Mackay, Confessions of a Teenage Dirtbag, and How We Can End Smoking in Scotland, by Neil Mackay, writer at large. My teenage idiocy knew no bounds. I once tap danced on the edge of a railway bridge to entertain a girlfriend. We both thought it was pretty cool until I fell off and plummeted 50 feet towards the tracks. Luckily, some trees broke my fall and I just ended up in casualty. Otherwise I wouldn't be writing this now. Instead, I'd be a faded memory in my hometown of a long dead half-wit. After staying out too late in an illicit boozy underage party, I thumbed a lift home from strangers only to discover when I got into the back seat that it was a skinhead couple in a stolen car. Instead of driving me home, they took me on a nighttime joyride of terror. It thankfully ended when they stopped to snog and glue sniff, allowing me to say my goodbyes and skedaddle. Perhaps my greatest feat of suicidal stupidity, though, was to teach myself how to smoke aged 14. This was the 80s. Latchkey kids could get away with just about anything back then. So, after school one day, I popped on a video nasty, fittingly Nightmares on a Damaged Brain, if I recall correctly, and decided I'd learn how to smoke. I bought 4 single Embassy No. 6 cigarettes from the corner shop, because why wouldn't an adult sell death to a youngster in their school uniform? I recall the afternoon vividly. I'd also bought a bottle of Raspberry Aid, reckoning I'd need something to wash the smokes down. Clearly, I was already a sophisticate. I tried a few amateur puffs before with friends in the park, but now I was turning professional. It was time to inhale. This was a battle royale I'd entered. The first few drags I'd been coughing and wheezing. There was even some drool, I believe. But brave wee soldier that I was, I struggled on. After the second cigarette, I needed a break as I was greening around the gills. I also needed to change what was on TV, because watching psychopaths murdering people wasn't making the experience of ingesting poison any more fun. I polished off my fizzy pop and switched over to children's TV. It could have been He-Man, it may have been Noggin the Nog, but whatever the show, by the time it ended I'd learned to smoke, like a big boy. God help us kids back then, we thought this was cool. Of course, there were millions of folk, young and old, with the basic intelligence to realise sucking cancer chemicals into your lungs isn't the best plan in the world, but for a long time they were in the minority. Many of us, especially Gen Xers, thought smoking was hip right into this century. Intelligent people looked on smoking as a fashion accessory, even though we were fully aware that cigarettes were killing us. But we were in our 20s and death only happens to olds, right? We'd grown up around smoking, and monkey see, monkey do. Isn't that the sad old truth? Our parents and grandparents smoked. Homes were fugs of fag fumes back then. Everyone smoked on TV. Our teachers smoked in school, for pity's sake. Doctors even smoked. You could once smoke in planes, but then it was quite easy to hijack aircraft back in the 1970s too. Mercifully, the medical profession eventually stubbed its own cigs out and started campaigning to clamp down on tobacco. Hallelujah, the rate of decline in smoking since the turn of the century has been remarkable. Less than 20% of Scots now smoke. Historians will look back and study what happened as a near perfect example of how social policy can change a society's habits in the space of just a few years. However, by the time the 2006 smoking ban arrived and cigarettes morphed into a pariah symbol, many folk my age were just too hooked to stop. We endured huddling in the rain like lepers outside pubs, just suck ourselves a little closer to death. I only quit a few years ago after some ill health, not smoking related ironically, put me in hospital. By the time I got out, I'd quit. I've never looked back. Smoking was my biggest, most dangerous, stupidest, most expensive, stinkiest mistake. I wish I'd never learned to inhale that day back in the 1980s with my trusty Raspberry Aid at my side. We're now in the foothills of a complete end to smoking. New Zealand is to ban anyone born after 2008 from buying cigarettes. Denmark will bring the same laws in for those born after 2010. There's talk that the UK government could do likewise, but with the ban potentially affecting anyone born from 1997 onwards, Scotland has rather amorphous plans to be smoke-free by 2034. I didn't turn into a smoke Nazi after quitting. I hate being around smoking now, but adults are free to do what they want. That's my view. Though the UK government risks taking things a wee bit too far, while Denmark and New Zealand may have hit the Goldilocks zone. It makes all the sense in the world to prevent the children of today from even touching a cigarette, unless it's some grim teaching device in history class. Britain threatens clamping down on adults though. If a ban on tobacco for anyone born from 1997 were put in place today, that would mean smokers who are now 25 would effectively be subject to prohibition. We'd face the absurd possibility of adult men and women still addicted to cigarettes asking older adults to buy their fix for them, like desperate teenagers seeking an immoral balm to do the off-licence jump in. The sale of tobacco should be banned, or rather phased out, but in a sensible way that doesn't turn me into adults and still suffering addiction. Here's a possible equitable solution. Today, you need to be 18 to buy tobacco in Scotland. That means you shouldn't be an addict if you're under 18, and if you are, then you've done it so illegally. Work back 18 years from now and we'll come to 2004. Perhaps that date is the point where we pick, fairly, to say no more. And that was an opinion piece by writer-at-large Neil Mackay.
Herald Scotland recorded on Thursday 17th of March 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Chris Brookmeyer and Why I Love Shatler Country Park near Hamilton. By Susan Swarbrick, columnist and senior features writer. Chris Brookmeyer, author. Where is it? Shatler Country Park, Hamilton. About 10 minutes drive from where I live. It takes its name from the house that was built as the Duke of Hamilton's hunting lodge in the 18th century, but mostly I go there for the landscape. The house is worth a visit for the exhibitions in the cafe, and for the sensation that you're on a ship if you walk through the upstairs rooms. The floor is so warped that you need your sea legs to get across it. Why do you go there? I go there to walk. There are many routes to explore, but my favourite is an 8-kilometre loop that takes in woodlands, meadows, the River Clyde and several sheltered small glens, one of which is actually called Sma Glen. It is the kind of place that feels completely different depending on the time of year, or even the time of day. It's particularly spectacular in heavy frost or after a snowfall. If you get there early in the morning, you will see deer in the paths and the occasional red squirrel. How often do you go? In pre-COVID days when I was working on the plot of a novel, I would sometimes go there several times a week to let the view inspire me and let the ideas flow. I missed it when we were restricted from non-essential travel. What's your favourite memory? There's a great play park for kids near the house, and at certain times of year I used to take my son and his pal there after nursery or school. There was something utterly serene about sitting in the late afternoon spring sunshine, watching the two of them play and hearing their laughter, utterly lost in the worlds they were creating. I remember thinking, this is what makes all the hard stuff about parenthood worthwhile. What do you take? Sturdy walking shoes and a judicious selection of layers that can be shed and tied around the waist if necessary. There are some steep climbs, so even in the coldest days you can be sweating by the time you reach the top. What do you leave behind? I do a lot of work while walking, so I leave behind all the distractions and temptations of being in the house. If I'm down by the Clyde or tramping in a carpet of pine needles, I can't decide the bathrooms need cleaned or that I ought to answer that email. Sum it up in 5 words. Green, tranquil, secluding, inspiring, ancient. What other travel spot is on your wish list? I've been dreaming of being back on the beach at Praia da Luz in Portugal. We've been there as a family so many times over the past 20 years, so it always feels like a place to take stock, to remember the different people we were when we walked there at previous stages of our lives. Finally going there post-pandemic is going to mean a lot. The Cut by Chris Brookmeyer is out now in paperback, brackets Abacus, £8.99, close brackets. His next book, The Cliff House, will be published by Little Brown on July 28. By Susan Swarbrick.
The Herald, Friday the 18th of March 2022. News. Government knew about P&O plans day before staff axed. This article is by Hannah Roger. Officials in the UK government were told about the plan to axe hundreds of staff at ferry firm P&O the day before workers, it has emerged. The Prime Minister's official spokesperson confirmed that some officials in the Department for Transport, the DfT, were informed of the plans on Wednesday night, but insisted Boris Johnson had no knowledge. He said the information was kept tight within the department, for commercial sensitivity reasons, but was unable to say when the PM found out. Asked if the DfT officials who were told informed any ministers on Wednesday night of the ferry firm's plans, he said, "Again, I don't believe so." But that's really a question for DfT. As the standard practice for these sorts of things, it's very tight commercial sensitivity as to who's aware of this, but I'd have had to refer to DfT for confirmation. Asked if P&O may have to repay its furlough money it claimed during the pandemic, or if it will lose its Freeport status in the Thames Freeport, the spokesman said it was unclear. He said, "We are establishing the facts of exactly what action this company took before deciding what action to take as a result of that. So I'm not going to speculate on what further action we may or may not take." The spokesman, who asked if the government accepted the trade union's points that the travel firm should have informed Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng about the plans, and if they did not, it would constitute breaking the law. He said, "We have asked the Insolvency Service to look at the notification requirements in relation to the redundancies announced because there are rules around that. And again, we will consider if any further action is appropriate once that has been concluded." He said he did not know if P&O had informed the Insolvency Service of its plans prior to making the announcement yesterday. Downing Street also said ministers do not believe P&O explored all possible avenues to secure the future of their business before making staff redundant. "We expect companies to treat employees fairly," the spokesperson said. "It is only in extreme circumstances that employers need to make extreme decisions to secure the future of their business if all other avenues have failed, including negotiations between employer and employee. We don't believe this was the case for P&O staff, but we are looking into this very carefully. The actions this company took yesterday are deeply disappointing and will be causing deep upset amongst loyal staff." This article is by Hannah Roger.
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 18th of March 2022, from the sports section, Celtic idol Chris Sutton praises Rangers for Europa League win over Red Star, by Ewan Payton. Celtic hero Chris Sutton praised Rangers for their Europa League triumph over Red Star Belgrade last night. The Ibrox side lost 2-1 on the night in the Serbian capital, but it mattered little as Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's men progressed to the quarter-finals 4-2 in aggregate. They will now be involved in the draw for the last 8 this lunchtime, with the semi-final draw also made at the same time. And, while plenty of Rangers-minded pundits such as Alan McCoist, Chris Boyd and Alan Hutton have been fulsome in their praise of their old team, Sutton put rivalry aside to congratulate the Light Blues. Sutton tweeted, "Alan McGregor brilliant once again tonight. Well done to Rangers. Good night for Scottish football." And that article is by Ewan Payton. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 18th of March 2022, from the sports section, Rangers consider last-minute withdrawal from Sydney Super Cup, by Ewan Payton, sports writer. Rangers are considering pulling out of the Sydney Super Cup, according to a report. The Ibrox board are said to be seriously pondering a U-turn in their decision to participate in the 14 friendly tournament in Australia. The tour, which is due to feature a friendly match versus Celtic, Down Under, is scheduled to take place during the World Cup shutdown in November this year. However, the Daily Record say that current Scottish champions are looking at pulling out of the tournament. Tickets for the Super Cup went on sale this week. The report states that organisers of the event are worried that Rangers are looking for a way out. The Record say the Light Blues believe there is a potential legal loophole which would allow them to withdraw without being financially penalised. Fans of both old firm clubs have stood firmly against the idea of a derby match abroad. Celtic confirmed their attendance to the tournament prior to City rivals Rangers. They marketed the tournament as a homecoming tour for boss Ange Postecoglou. And that article was by Ewan Payton. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 18th of March 2022, from the sports section, Rangers help tighten Scotland's grip on top 10 coefficient spot, by Ewan Payton. Rangers' progression to the quarter-finals of the Europa League has helped tighten Scotland's grip on an all-important top 10 spot in the UEFA coefficient rankings. The Scottish champions are the only representative from the country left in European competitions this season. They saw off Red Star Belgrade on Thursday night to secure a place in the last 8 of the Europa League. They did, however, lose 2-1 in the night in the Serbian capital. Scotland sit 9th in UEFA's coefficient table on 35.500 points. The Ibrox side earned the nation an additional 0.2 points for getting through to the next round last night. Serbia, ironically, sit in 11th place on 33.375 points. Red Stars win at the Maracana earned them 0.5 points. However, the Serbs cannot gain any further ground in Scotland this season, with both Red Star and Partizan Belgrade now out of the Europa League and Conference League respectively. This therefore ends our hopes of overtaking Scotland in the rankings this season, and so next season's Scottish champions, as well as the winners of the current campaign, look certain to earn a place in the Champions League group stages. This is of course a huge boost to both Rangers and Celtic. Russia sit right behind Scotland in 10th position on 34.482 points. They of course are unable to add to that tally, with sanctions imposed on the country by UEFA, meaning Spartak Moscow were dumped out as RB Leipzig gained a bye. And that was an article by Ewan Payton.
Herald Scotland recorded on Friday 18th of March 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Issue of the day, Should Tchaikovsky Play On? By Maureen Sugden, reporter. Performances of Tchaikovsky have been cancelled, sparking debate over whether it is right to stop playing the Russian composer's work and any other Russian cultural offerings. He is of the most famous composers in history. Born in 1840, Pyotr Tchaikovsky is famous for his ballets Swan Lake, The Sleeping Beauty and The Nutcracker, while his Piano Concerto No. 1 is one of the most popular ever written. What exactly has been cancelled? Cardiff Philharmonic Orchestra had been due to hold a Tchaikovsky concert in the city on March 18, but has dropped his work from the event and will instead perform compositions by Elgar, Dvorak and John Williams. Due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine? A post in the orchestra's official website stated, in light of the recent Russian invasion of Ukraine, Cardiff Philharmonic Orchestra feel the previously advertised programme, including the 1812 Overture, to be inappropriate at this time, as it tells the story of Napoleon's defeat at the hands of the Russian army. In a statement posted to Facebook, it added, "A member of the orchestra has family directly involved in the Ukraine situation, and we are trying to respect that situation during the immediate term." Were there other issues? With two pieces in particular, the statement read, there were also two military-themed pieces as part of the programme, Marsh Slave and 1812 Overture, that we felt were particularly inappropriate at this time. We were also made aware at the time that the title Little Russian of Symphony No. 2 was deemed offensive to Ukrainians. The response has been mixed. In the midst of these desperate times, reaction has been heated. One response on Facebook read, "What kind of an imbecile doesn't have respect for Russian culture because of an insane man?" Another called for the orchestra to be cancelled, and Welsh Conservative MP Faye Jones said in social media, "Groan, Putin is the enemy here, not Russia." But Cardiff Philharmonic is not alone. In Switzerland, the theatre orchestra of Bien Solaire in Biel cancelled its remaining performances of a production of Tchaikovsky's Mazeppa at the weekend. A statement said, due to the current situation in Ukraine, we're forced to cancel the performance of the opera Mazeppa. The opera, based on a work by 19th century Russian poet Alexander Pushkin, tells the story of a 17th century Ukrainian Cossack hero. Around the world? In Japan, the Chubu Philharmonic Orchestra announced it will replace Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture with another piece in a concert to be held in Komaki in central Japan on March 26, saying it decided to do so because of the composition's subject matter. It will instead perform Finlandia, an 1899 symphonic poem by Finnish composer Jean Sibelius, although they will play Trepak from The Nutcracker. A statement read, "We stand with Ukraine by following the example of this piece, which is a wish for the freedom and independence of Finland, then under Russian rule." Elsewhere, just last week Glasgow Film Festival removed 2 Russian films from the programme, saying it would be inappropriate to proceed as normal with the screenings. The European Broadcasting Union, EBU, has said Russia is no longer allowed to participate in this year's Eurovision Song Contest, and the Royal Opera House has cancelled a planned residency by Moscow's Bolshoi Ballet. By Maureen Sugden.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 21st of March 2022, from the sports section, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst makes Rangers relief admission after win over Dundee. By Christopher Jack, senior Rangers writer. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was relieved Rangers didn't shoot themselves in the foot as he kept their title hopes alive with a battling victory at Dens Park. The champions will head into the Old Firm clash with Celtic next month, just 3 points adrift in the Premiership after a comeback win over Dundee. Christy Elliott headed the hosts into an early lead, and a penalty miss from James Tavernier summed up Rangers' wretched efforts in the first half. But Aaron Ramsey opened his account for the Light Blues as he converted from close range, and Connor Goldson struck with just minutes to spare to save Van Bronckhorst's side. And the Dutchman knows how big a win this could be after Rangers maintained their momentum and cut the deficit to their Old Firm rivals following their victory over Ross County earlier in the weekend. Van Bronckhorst said, "A big relief, of course, to go away with the 3 points today. The game was a tough game and we didn't start really well. They were 1-0 in front and we missed a penalty. Second half we created more chances than the first, and sometimes you have to be a little bit lucky, which we were in the end, that the ball dropped for corner when we included another third striker. The first attack we scored, so that was really good and we could change to our normal system. Today could have cost us 2 big points, but we kept the belief and worked hard to win the game in difficult circumstances. The pitch wasn't ideal for us to play. It had no water until during the game, so that was a bit strange. But we have to overcome these situations. We did everything to get a good result and make sure we were off the pitch as winners." And that was an article by Christopher Jack. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 21st of March 2022, from the sports section, Lewis Ferguson unfazed by Cagliari scouting mission after Serie A outfit watched Aberdeen's win over Hibs. By Frank Gilfeather. Lewis Ferguson showed he had nerves of steel when he converted 2 penalty kicks against Hibs, undaunted that a scout from Serie A outfit, Cagliari, were monitoring him from the Aberdeen stand. The midfielder, arguably the Dons' most consistent performer this season, despite a campaign that sees him battling for a top 6 finish, brushed aside a recent spot kick miss against Hearts to send the Highbees down into 5th spot in the Cinch Premiership and bring his goals tally in all competitions to 14. It's a statistic that wouldn't have bypassed Cagliari's representative at Pittodrie, where Calvin Ramsey's own goal to give the visitors the lead was soon overturned before Vicente Benchigen's late strike underlined their superiority. Ferguson, 22, was aware of the presence of the scout from the Italian club, struggling in 4th and bottom place in Italy's top tier, while teams from south of the border also began to hover, remembering the Reds turned down a £2 million bid from Watford in the summer. "I was told about the scout," he said. "It doesn't faze me. It doesn't bother me. You never know who's watching. Anybody could have been in the stand watching. You've just got to try and impress. I just try to play the way I normally play. If they're impressed, then they're impressed. But that sort of stuff doesn't faze me." This cool customer was also unconcerned over taking the penalty kicks, despite missing his previous one at Hearts at the beginning of the month when Jambo's keeper Craig Gordon saved. "Nah, it's a penalty, innit?" he said. "If the keeper goes the right way, he saves it. It honestly doesn't bother me. Missing the last one never really bothered me. I just thought if I hit the target, and I did that with both of them, it can go in. I'm quite pleased. Honestly, I just believe if I go up, strike through the ball, hit the target and put it where I want to put it, whether I miss or not, I'm not really too bothered about it. I've scored plenty. I'm not going to beat myself up about missing penalties. Thankfully, against the Burning I scored 2, so I'm happy." The second penalty award brought further controversy when Hibs centre-back Ryan Porteous was red-carded for his clumsy challenge on Ross McCrory in the area, with the Easter Roadman deploying a piece of pre-penalty kick gamesmanship before he left the pitch. "I know Porto," he said. I played with him plenty of times to Scotland and in the different age groups. He was just telling me how good the keeper, Kevin Dabrowski, was at saving penalties. As he does. You know what he's like. I was just standing listening to him, then put my penalty down the middle. I probably tried the same with him, to be honest, if he was taking a penalty. It was just a bit of a laugh. Porteous sending off brings with it suspension. A worry for manager Sean Maloney when normal services resumed following the commercial break, as Highbees faced Dundee United and Hearts before the split. Chris Cadden, whose cross led to their opener, believes that interlude will allow some of the club's injured players time to heal, as well as to analyse the team's current form, which has seen them reach the upcoming Scottish Cup semi-final against their rivals from the capital. The semi-final is there, and something to look forward to, he said, but the two league games are huge. We have got to focus on them, as the semi-final will take care of itself when it comes around. There will be a big build-up for the big occasion, but first and foremost, the league is the most important thing, and we want that top 6 place. We wouldn't want to miss out on that. Porto's great, as he's an integral part of the defence and he's a big loss for us, but Paul Hanlon has come back, so we're in a better position now with him available. And that was an article by Frank Gilfeather. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 21st of March 2022, from the sports section. Taylor Fritz takes Indian Wells title and ends Rafael Nadal's 20-match streak. Taylor Fritz has snapped Rafa Nadal's 20-match winning streak as the Californian claimed his first ATP Masters 1000 title at Indian Wells. There were errors from both throughout, as Fritz took the first set and the pair ended a tiebreaker in the end of the second, with neither having lost one at Indian Wells this year in singles. But it was the 24-year-old, ranked 20th, who emerged victorious to finish 6-3-7-6, winner over the world number 4, with Fritz becoming the first American to win the tournament since Andre Agassi in 2001. Earlier, Poland's Iga Swiatek won the women's title with a commanding victory over Maria Sakkari. Swiatek rose to number 2 in the world after a 6-4-6-1 win over her Greek opponent. We've already started a pretty cool rivalry, and I think it's going to last a few more years, so it's pretty exciting, Swiatek said on her on-court interview. We're going to play many more finals. Today was pretty crazy because of the conditions. My team did an amazing job. And that article was unattributed. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 21st of March 2022, from the opinion section. Boris Johnson's Braveheart moment sparks outrage, by Alison Rowett, senior politics and features writer. As Chancellor, Rishi Sunak has not had his troubles to seek. A month after he was appointed, the first COVID lockdown was announced. 2 years on, as the economy begins to emerge from that crisis, Russia invades Ukraine and the cost of living goes skywards. Now, just to add to his woes, along comes the boss to put his size 10s in it. Well, that is one way of looking at it. If you were feeling generous, Boris Johnson's comparison of war in Ukraine and Brexit was a crass move that ultimately meant no harm. Those of a more cynical bent, however, might see the resulting row as a canny distraction from a spring statement this week that has few answers to a growing number of pressing questions. The uproar over Mr Johnson's speech to his party's spring conference in Blackpool features widely in the Sunday political shows. Mr Johnson, as if trying to rival Mel Gibson's Braveheart in the number of mentions of freedom, had said, "I know that it's the instinct of the people of this country, like the people of Ukraine, to choose freedom every time. I can give you a couple of famous recent examples. When the British people voted for Brexit, in such large numbers, I don't believe it was because they were remotely hostile to foreigners. It's because they wanted to be free to do things differently, and for this country to be able to run itself." Among those to take offence was Gavin Barwell, Theresa May's Chief of Staff, when she was Prime Minister. The Conservative peer tweeted, "Apart from the bit where voting in a free and fair referendum isn't in any way comparable with risking your life to defend your country against invasion, and the awkward fact that Ukrainians are fighting for the freedom to join the EU, this comparison is bang on." First, to tackle the Chancellor on the Brexit comparison was Sky News' Sophie Ridge on Sunday. I don't think those two situations are directly analogous, said Mr Sunak. I don't think the Prime Minister was saying that they were directly analogous either. People will draw their own conclusions. An hour later, it was the turn of Sophie Rayworth, presenter of BBC One's Sunday show, to talk comparisons. By this point, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, had already called the Prime Minister's remarks utterly distasteful and demanded he apologises to UK citizens and Ukrainians. The Chancellor stuck to his line that the PM was not making a direct comparison, adding, he was making some general observations about people's desire for freedom. Mr Sunak went on to make some general observations of his own about the Spring Statement. It is the duty of every Chancellor at such times to tell the media, at length, that there is nothing they can tell the media. Earlier in Sunday morning's newspaper review, Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert, said the cost of living crisis was the worst he had seen in 22 years, and that included during COVID and the financial crash. I am virtually out of tools to help people now, said Mr Lewis, adding that political intervention was now required. As for what that intervention might be, the Chancellor promised he would stand by hard-pressed households. The strongest steer, first revealed in the Mail on Sunday, was towards a cut in field duty. Accompanying the interview was a photograph. Mr Sunak is known for letting his photoshoots do the talking for him. Whether it has been pictured working at a bank of computer screens, code for how hard-working I am, or wearing £95 sandals, I've got a few bob and I'm trendy. He is careful about the signal he sends. This time, the nudge was a large photograph above his desk of Nigel Lawson, Chancellor as was, whose top-rate tax-cutting budget from 1988 caused uproar in the opposition benches, including the suspension of one Alex Salmond MP. Just in case the Lawson photo had not been clear enough, Mr Sunak told the paper he had been the pandemic Chancellor, the furlough Chancellor and the fixing the public finances Chancellor. Now he wants to be seen as the tax-cutting Chancellor, insisting, my priority over the rest of this Parliament is to cut people's taxes. That is my mission. What is not clear is how long he might have to achieve this label change. According to one report over the weekend, Downing Street advisers have been told to prepare for an election next autumn and not, as expected, May 2024. The pressure is on the Chancellor once more. And that was a comment piece by Alison Rowett.
The Herald, Monday the 21st of March 2022. News. Glasgow faces new £225 million equal pay bill time bomb. This article is by Martin Williams. Scotland's biggest local authority is facing a ticking £225 million equal pay time bomb 3 years after it had to remortgage major venues to pay for a settlement. It comes as Glasgow City Council workers prepare to work out over an equal pay dispute in 2 days of strike action that a union said will affect home care, schools and other services. The dispute is over what unions see as the reneging of an agreement to settle a dispute which has to date cost nearly £550 million to end chronic sex discrimination. Unison said its members in Glasgow will strike on March the 29th and 30th and will then do so again in April if there is no resolution to the dispute. It is calling out nearly 9,000 members and said that with a sister trade union also joining the action, more than 12,000 workers could strike. This would affect home care, cleaning, catering, schools, nurseries, residential homes, homelessness, hostels and addiction services across the council. The council had part settled with 13,000 women at a total cost of £505 million in 2019. It has emerged that outstanding claims are estimated at £225 million because the unequal pay scheme remains in place. Unions say that over 5,000 claimants have still received no settlement for the period up to March 2018, and 18,000 claimants are still waiting for a settlement for the period after March 2018. Sources say the delay cost to settle claims up to 2018 is at around £25 million, and to make an interim payment to all claimants from 2018 to now stands at approximately £200 million. And unions have warned that the amount will keep growing if nothing is done. There is concern that the new pay and grading system to eliminate gender pay discrimination will not be implemented until 2024 due to the volume of work involved around job evaluation. 3 years ago, the City Council approved plans to sell off major venues to an arm's length body and leased them back in a bid to try and finance the initial £548 million liability. The move affected venues such as the Armadillo, the Emirates Arena, the Riverside Museum and Tory Glen Regional Football Centre, and then leased them back to the council with the cost of the lease designed to meet the loan repayments. The union says that despite promises from Glasgow City Council to settle equal pay claims, thousands of women are still stuck on unequal pay scales, waiting for their claims to be settled in full. Mandy McDowell, Unison Regional Organiser, said every year that employees continue to work under an unequal pay scheme creates another liability for settlement. The intention had been for the council to implement a new equality-proofed pay scheme, but it hasn't done that. The whole thing is delayed and therefore people are still being underpaid. The claims for equal pay have only been settled until 2018. That means low-paid women continue to be underpaid, and this is projected to continue. The settlement only covered one aspect of the claims. Glasgow City Council say the delay in the pay and grading system was agreed with the claimants' representatives, including the unions. They say one of the major reasons was that Unison did not want members to take part in job evaluation interviews during the pandemic. The council was praised 2 years ago by a regulator for their progress in part settling the equal pay dispute. The Scottish Accounts Commission said that dealing with the claims had been a significant development, with more than 98% of cases part settled. The claimant group reached the equal pay deal with the council in 2018. That came after about 8,000 Glasgow Council workers walked out on strike for 48 hours in October 2018 in a bid to settle the long-running pay claim. The dispute centred around workers in traditionally female-dominated roles such as catering or home care being paid up to £3 an hour less than those in male-dominated jobs such as refuse workers or grave diggers. In 2017, 2 judgments at the Court of Session ruled that both the Council's Payment Protection Scheme and its Workforce Pay and Benefits Review discriminated against women workers. The claimant group, as part of the 2019 settlement process, agreed to suspend legal proceedings with the Council to focus on replacing the discriminatory pay process. To pay for the claims, Glasgow City Council approved plans to sell off major venues to an arm's length body before leasing them back. The dispute has been fought through the tribunals and courts for more than a decade. Stems from 2006 when a new job evaluation scheme was introduced by the then Labour-run council with the aim of addressing gender pay inequality. Instead, say the women affected, it entrenched discrimination by paying female-dominated jobs such as catering and cleaning less than male-dominated jobs such as refuse collection because of a complex system that penalised people working split shifts and irregular hours. After decades of Labour control, the SNP won control of the council in elections in May 2017 on a manifesto that promised to settle the claims. But the women's representatives soon accused the council of failing to engage properly in negotiations, while critics accused the unions of manipulating the dispute to score points against the new SNP administration. In 2017, 2 judgments at the Court of Session ruled that both the Council's Payment Protection Scheme and its Workforce Pay and Benefits Review discriminated against women workers. The claimant group, as part of the 2019 settlement process, agreed to suspend legal proceedings with the Council to focus on replacing the discriminatory pay process. Glasgow City Council has said it is prepared to make offers to settle new claims on the basis of the 2019 deal. A council spokesperson said, "There is no estimated cost because there is, at this moment, no agreement. However, negotiations are ongoing and following the process that unions requested and agreed at the time of the 2019 deal. They know we are ready to make offers on the new claims. They know that needs to happen before we can address the gap period." This article is by Martin Williams. The Herald, Monday the 21st of March 2022. News. ScotGov-controlled ferries firm CMAL spends £170,000 on foreign travel. This article is by Martin Williams. A Scottish Government-controlled company which gave a Lifeline Ferries contract to Turkey has spent hundreds of pounds more on monthly overseas travel during the pandemic than before COVID hit, it can be revealed. Caledonian Maritime Assets Limited, CMAL, the taxpayer-funded firm which owns and procures ferries, has racked up £170,000 in foreign travel over the last 7 years. Official figures reveal that CMAL was spending nearly £300 a month more per month on overseas travel during the pandemic than in the 5 years before the virus hit. It comes as questions continue to be raised about the legality of giving Turkish shipyard the £105 million ferry order. There is continuing concern that Scottish Government-controlled CMAL has failed to outline what the community benefits are for giving the work to Turkey, having rejected a bid for the project from state-controlled Ferguson Marine in a move some critics described as a scandal. The groundbreaking E-Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014, when it was brought, was seen by many as a welcome move away from contracts awarded only on the basis of the lowest price towards those which offer the best long-term outcomes for Scotland's communities and the environment. Public contracts valued at £4 million or above have specific requirements in relation to community benefits in the authority area that a contract is issued. These should include training and recruitment, the availability of subcontracting and supplier opportunities, and that it is intended to improve the economic, social or environmental well-being of the area. If no community benefits are sought in a contract, a statement must be published on justifying the decision. When CMAL announced the Turkish shipyard firm as the preferred bidder, no benefits to any Scottish community were listed. CMAL says that as the contract has not been officially awarded yet, it cannot provide any details about the bid. Now it has emerged that CMAL has amassed £169,848.40 in overseas travel over the last 5 years. It was spending an average of £2,836.06 a month over 6 months during the COVID pandemic in 2020 and 2021, having previously forked out £2,547.22 a month in the 5 years before the virus restrictions. Alba Party Deputy Kenny McCaskill criticised the spend. CMAL's remit doesn't extend beyond the Minch, but they've run up almost £170,000 in overseas travel since 2015 and struggle to sail the seas they're supposed to serve, he said. This even includes periods when foreign travel was precluded through lockdown. It's bad enough that CMAL are giving contracts for ships that should be built in Scotland, but it adds salt to the wound that whilst the ships they provided for remote communities lie idle, berthed or being repaired, they're jetting around the globe. Ministers have previously been warned that they may have acted unlawfully by failing to give nationalised shipbuilder Ferguson Marine a look-in for a £100 million contract to create 2 new Lifeline ferries to serve Islay. The Turkish shipyard won in front of 4 overseas companies to bid for the contract to build the 2 vessels and exclude the Inverclyde shipbuilder. Finance Secretary Kate Forbes has stated that in line with the Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014, bidders for the Islay procurement process were required to detail the community benefits they are able to offer within their response to the invitation to tender. Submissions from the 4 yards were evaluated, including the responses to the community benefits section included within the original contract notice. Ferguson Marine, which runs the last remaining shipyard on the Lower Clyde, was nationalised after it financially collapsed in August 2019 amid soaring costs and delays to the construction of 2 Lifeline island ferries. It came 5 years after tycoon Jim McCall first rescued the yard when it went bust. The delivery of new island ferries MV Glen Sannox and Hull 802, which were due online in the first half of 2018, was found to be between 4 and 5 years late, with costs doubling to over £200 million. Earlier this year, it emerged that the completion of the long overdue ferries had been delayed again. The Islay route is already one of the busiest services for freight on the Clyde and Hebrides network, and Seamile says that the incoming ferries will support the island's vital economic activity. The 4 shortlisted shipyards were to submit their technical and commercial proposals for the design and construction of the 2 vessels. It was confirmed Ferguson Marine embarked in a bid for the contract through the initial pre-qualification questionnaire process, but failed to make the shortlist. A Seamile spokesperson said that Mr McCaskill's comment demonstrated a profound lack of understanding of Seamile's role and the work we do to support Scotland's ferry infrastructure, including the Northern Isles beyond the Minch. The spokesman added, "We have spent considerable time in past years searching the global second-hand market for ferries to bring resilience to the fleet. It is vital that our vessels team inspect these ferries first-hand to assess their suitability for the network. We also visit shipyards during the evaluation stage of the new vessel procurement process to correlate the bid response from each yard with their reality and attend factory acceptance tests for machinery. In terms of travel during lockdown, ferries are a lifeline service and many of our team were given critical worker status during the pandemic to maintain infrastructure." This article is by Martin Williams.
Reported from the Herald on the 22nd of March 2022, from the sports section. Matt O'Reilly on Celtic transfer motivation and his international ambitions by Ewan Payton. Celtic attacker Matt O'Reilly insists his move north of the border was made with improving his international prospects in mind. The 21-year-old has been drafted in the Denmark under-21 national squad for their upcoming games. It's another step in the right direction for the Hoopsies, a matter of just 2 months after his transfer from MK Dons to Parkhead. He was being tracked by other sides in the January window, with West Brom and Swansea believed to be among those interested. He's been capped at youth level for England. He's also eligible for Norway. However, Denmark made their move as they call him up to the 21s. Now, with his first appearance on the horizon, he will aim to catch the eye of his senior squad boss Kasper Hjulmand. O'Reilly told Tipsbladet, "The switch to Celtic was a step up and I've managed to play continuously there with Jesper Sorensen, Denmark under-21 boss has looked at. When I switched to Celtic I knew there was a greater chance of playing for the national team. When I heard about the interest from Denmark I thought it was cool. I had a really good gut feeling that this is the right thing for me. It has previously been a difficult question for me when I was born and raised in England, but on the other hand my mother is Danish. I have family there and I really like the country, so right now I lean most towards Denmark." That article was by Ewan Payton. Recorded from the Herald on the 22nd of March 2022, from the sports sections. Scotland provide fitness update on star duo Andy Robertson and Lydon Dykes, by Aidan Smith. Captain Andy Robertson and Lydon Dykes have not joined up with the Scotland squad, but coach Stephen Naismith is hoping that they can play some part in the upcoming friendly doubleheader. The Liverpool left-back who missed the FA Cup tie against Nottingham Forest at the weekend has COVID-19. Striker Dykes has missed the last 6 games for QPR with a hamstring injury and is being assessed by his club. Steve Clarke's side face Poland at Hampden Park on Thursday night and are away to either Wales or Austria next week. Naismith said there is hope that they will be back involved at some point. When that is will be determined by the clubs and the protocols that are in place, but there is hope that they will join the squad at some point. But in terms of the first game, it is pretty clear that the group who are here will be the ones that we focus on for this game. Then, as with every game, we will look at the injuries and things like that after that. It is a day-by-day situation. Robbo has COVID, so there's a protocol you have to follow, and Lydon is back at his club getting treatment and seeing where he is, so there's a constant dialogue day to day, but there is a hope that we'll be involved at some stage. Tomorrow might change in terms of circumstances, but again the clubs are the ones who will drive the situation, because they will not release a player when they have an injury or when they are not right. That article was by Aidan Smith.
And that was this week's The Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.